for yourself and your family. So I'll go straight to my presentation because I don't want to waste your time. And I'm looking at climate change and its impacts on agriculture. And when we talk about agriculture, we talk of both crops and livestock production. In my 10 years or 13 years of helping different farmers, I've been able to produce about, up to this year, 43 different crops, purely rain-fed. 43 different crops, and we've tried to make them all purely rain-fed so that we can emulate of what God told Adam and Eve when he put them in the Garden of Eden. Because he told them, go and till the land. True? Other than tilling, you're going to multiply. But now for us, in the current generation, we're just multiplying, but you're not tilling the land. True? So by the year 2050, our projection is that the world's population is going to be 10 billion, between 9.6 to 10 billion. That will be the world's population. Now, who will feed the population? Because we have the risk that is facing us today, that's climate change. And climate change, they're saying from a pre-industrial times, today there's an increase of 1 to 1.1 degrees in the global temperature. So the global temperatures are just rising and rising and rising. So it might be 0.0 something degrees, but it's really affecting the whole it's affecting the whole world. It's affecting different industries. Because if it's affecting agriculture in this house, is it affecting the insurance companies? Are you affected by agriculture? Yeah, it's affecting the transport industry. It's affecting, if you look across even education, look at health, everywhere is being affected by agriculture. And when we talk about the 1.1 degrees is pre-industrial times, this is when we didn't have so many industries. So when we started having these industries coming up in the whole world, we talk in the Western, in the first world countries and not in Africa. Because most people are saying for now we are paying for what we did not cause, the global warming. But initially it came from the first one. That's how we've heard of carbon credits. There are companies in the first world countries that are paying African farmers carbon credits just for carbon sequestration. So they come and they look at how much carbon have you put back into the soil from the atmosphere to reduce global warming, and they quantify it like it can be a figure per hectare, and then you're paid. So you are being paid, someone who is polluting the environment, let's say in China, have some funds that they send to Africa so that you can be paid for fixing the carbon dioxide or methane or carbon monoxide that they've emitted into the atmosphere. So the 1.1% decrease since pre-industrial times to date has really caused us a lot of problems, like increase or intensity of extreme weather events. When you talk about extreme weather events, there are floods. Yesterday we saw some floods in where was that? The other day, the floods in Isiolo. True. That's an extreme weather event because no one would expect flooding in Isiolo when you are used to it to be like a very dry land. We have drought, and at times it's extreme drought. If you remember 2022, 2023, we were experiencing drought across the continent and even across the whole world. That's why we had so many wildfires starting from Australia to the US and even in Africa. We had so many wildfires, and that's as a result of drought. Because when it's dry, all the vegetation becomes dry and they are susceptible to fires. We have heat waves. There's a time there were news that people should stay in their houses for as long as possible during the days. And that's because of the heat waves. And that's caused by the increased temperatures. And going to agriculture, we say we contribute to 30% of global greenhouse gases. The agricultural industry and more so industrial farming, we are contributing to the 30% of greenhouse gases that are emitting into the atmosphere. Why? Nowadays, if you want to farm, we've seen what was happening in Mau. People clear land so that they can farm. Is it sustainable? Is it sustainable? 10 years ago, most of the wheat and corn was coming from the Mau region. And that area used to be, first it was fertile. They used to receive a sufficient rainfall. And land there was cheap. So everyone, all the politicians, or all people, if you had money, you're being told just invest it in agriculture. But now what's happening in Mau region, everyone is moving out. Everyone is moving out and they're saying this area is not productive. Why? Because of our own destruction. So in agriculture, we are contributing to the 30% greenhouse gases emissions through the equipment. We are using tractors, which are using fossil fuels. We are cutting down trees, deforestation, so that we can increase our farming land. And we are also using synthetic fertilizers and agrochemicals. And all these are ending up into the atmosphere. So the 30% is being caused by the three factors, and they are all contributing to global warming. This is the map of Kenya, and we have some arid counties painted in red and semi-arid counties painted in, is that yellow or orange? Someone says gold. Yeah, the semi-arid counties are painted in yellow or gold. So the arid counties are the normal counties that we know experiences drought, the Tana River, Turkana, Samburu, Isiolo, Wajir, Mandera. And nowadays, there's no big difference between the arid and semi-arid counties. So the Iars counties, the yellow, gold, and the red, those are arid counties. They receive less than 600 millimeters of rainfall annually. That's the amount of rainfall that they're receiving every year. And the rainfall that they're receiving is not even sustainable to produce. It's not sustainable to produce any crop in their mines. Okay, I say in their mines because those are dry. They are considered dry. So if you're told to go buy land in Turkana, how many people go there? Turkana. Or even you are told go buy a land in Wajir or Mandera, no one would want to venture in there. And that's why land there is cheap. True. If you go to Wajir or Mandera, I was in Mandera sometimes back last year in April, and I asked for a price of an acre of land, and I was told these are 25,000 shillings. If you wanted to get an acre, Daniel, how much is an acre in Nyandarua? 1 million per acre. And an acre in Mandera is 25,000. In Kibwezi is in Makueni County and is fairly dry. I asked about the price of an acre of land. My friend from Kibwezi, how much is an acre of land from Kibwezi? In Kibwezi, sorry. 70 to 100. That's true. That's what I got. Depending on the location, if it's near the river, you will get an acre of land even at 140 shillings. But in all the other areas, even 50 shillings, you can buy an acre of land. Why? 50,000 shillings. 50,000 Kenya shillings. Sorry, 50K, 50,000 Kenya shillings. Why? Because what are you being sold when you're being sold land? What are you being sold? Are you just being sold land? Or there is any other thing that makes the price like from 50,000 Kenya shillings to 1.2 million? What brings about the difference in productivity? Yeah, so when you're being sold land, you're actually being sold rainfall. So if you compare the prices in Kenya, in the very wet areas, if you want to buy like an agricultural land, it will be like even 100 times dearer than the arid areas. And all these areas, whether you are receiving 600 or you are receiving 1,500 millimeters of rainfall annually, all these areas are productive. So in a nutshell, what's happening in Kenya, 90% of our land is already arid or semi-arid, and the 10% that is remaining is what is feeding the entire country. Okay? Because you can't grow maize in Mandera, can you? Can you grow maize in Mandera? Can you? For those people who know Mandera. For those people who know Isiolo, can you grow maize in Isiolo? Or even beans? Can you? Yeah. Most people are shaking their heads, and I think this is it no or yes? No. Yeah, so you're together in that you can't grow anything in those areas, but for me, I can prove that you can grow anything in those areas. I don't want to delve into that because I want to look at climate change, and it's possible to produce crops in all these areas, both in arid and semi-arid. But the level of aridity has been caused majorly by climate change, which is the increase in temperatures causing the extreme weather events like flooding. We have the droughts. We have strong winds, which were not common previously, and we are looking into solutions like how can we make our country and then Africa and even the rest of the world sustainable for the future generations, if not for us. So the temperatures are also projected to increase by about another 1.5 degrees by 2050. So by 2050, if we don't look into climate change and how we can control the effects of climate change or how we can reverse climate change, by 2050, we have an increase of 1.5 degrees in temperature. And we say the population will be 9.7 to 10 million. So if we look at that, and from experience, now most farmers don't even do irrigation. We mostly rely on rainfall. And that's why when you go to Eastern Kenya, I've interacted with so many people from Eastern Kenya like Machakos, Makueni, Kitui, and they say we are used to planting and losing. And I'm like, why do you plant? They say it's a part of potato. It's just like betting. How long are we going to be betting with our lands? Is it sustainable? Even if you're working and you're earning and you're putting that money into your farm every year and you're getting knacking, how are you going to regain your money and how is the future generation going to survive? So, as Kenya is faced by a series of extreme weather events, including prolonged droughts, severe flooding, which are all impacting agriculture, infrastructure, and energy production. In energy production, which we also need in agriculture, if we don't look into embracing green or renewable energies, we are still going backwards. True. We need infrastructure. Like, no, if I want to go and pick a produce from Laikipia, where we have a large tracts of land and we don't have the roads, is agriculture going to be sustainable? it's not going to be sustainable at all. When we experience severe, like heavy rainfalls from in Mau Narok area, most of the times you hear transport has been cut off. You can't cross. The other time we had Mai Mahi area where we had mudslides, and then after that we had a section that had been cut off, and then we had lands that had been eroded. And if you look into research, by at the moment you are losing about 50 million tons of top fertile soil in the world, and it's all going to erosion, either wind or water. All that top soil that is fertile is being washed away. How can we control this? And this is what is affecting our production. So we need to look into the human activities or the anthropogenic activities that are causing or fueling climate change. What are some of the activities that us as human beings are doing or are engaging in and are contributing to climate change? We have one, industrialization, and that's why we were saying the temperatures have increased from the pre-industrial times. That's in the 18th century. So industrialization, if you hear even everyone talking, our leaders, we had like Nakuru County, we were told there is an economic zone, like 200 acres. What's going to happen in that area? Investors are going to come and build industries, whether cement or maybe what other industries can be put up here. You cannot cement factories. Like I've seen one, there's one Simba cement along Nakuru, Salga. There's a Simba cement there. We can have factories like maybe even what factories can we have here? Flour processing farm. Yeah, we can have processing farms, like people who are doing soaps. If you go to Mulolongo, there are Kappa oils, and you find so many industries along there. There are soaps like Omo and what have you. You can have industries like we have these scrap metals where they are burning the metals, and they melt the metals and they produce new metals. True. So when they melt those metals and they are burning, they're using very high temperatures to melt the metals. And I once stayed in Athi River, and in Athi River there are about six scrap metals industrial factories. When it rains in Athi River and you want to collect some water with a trough, that water is black in color. And by then I didn't know what was happening, because I was just thinking maybe the iron sheets were dirty from the dust, because that area is obviously dusty. But what I realized after 2 years, there's a guy who built a house and he had very clear iron sheets. But in 2 years, those iron sheets are rusty, and you can even see holes on them, because that rain is acidic, and it's because of the acidic gases that are coming from the factories going to the clouds, and then they solidify through condense. When they get to the clouds and it's going to rain, that rain comes back polluted, and you can't even drink that water. If you go to the same place at the river, because they use that water, anyone who's been to Athi River, if you look at kids in Athi River, their teeth brown. True? Yeah. 90% of kids who are born in Athi River, their teeth are brown, and it's because of all those cement industries, scrap metal industries. We have some tiles industries there, and no one, like I can say environmental impact assessments was done in that area before all these industries came up. But they didn't look at what are the long-term effects of having these industries in that area. given that there is high population, that means we are killing these people slowly by slowly, which is really unfortunate. If you look at the deaths in Athi River alone, most of them are from respiratory related illnesses because of the kind of air that you're breathing in. So if it's affecting people now, how will it be in future with the level of industrialization that we are having? Those industries are mostly using fossil fuels, which when you burn produce carbon dioxide, you can have carbon monoxide. And those are some of the greenhouse gases that are contributing to global warming. We have industrial farming that I was talking about, and that's in that image is a tractor, and the tractor is obviously using a diesel, which is fossil fuel. The same tractor might have some spillages of maybe engine oil or even the hydraulic oils onto the soil. All of the industrial farmers are using synthetic fertilizers and agrochemicals because they say if you don't use these chemicals, the cost of production is going to be high and the yields are going to be very low. Do you have any option? If you're having 3,000 acres of land in Athi River, the house quest is 3,000 acres. When we want to weed, but have you been there when we are weeding? No. When we want to weed, we get 800 people, casuals, to get into the field, and you are not sure whether they are doing the right job or not. True. So tomorrow you see there is a herbicide that I can use and kill weeds and leave my beans or sorghum. What do? You go use the agrochemical and you say, oh, I can't use expensive labor that is not helping me. Let me go into the chemicals. Yes, you've used the chemicals, but is it sustainable? I've seen, because I've been privileged to be there for 11 years now in our space, and I've seen yields dropping from 3 to 4 tons per hectare to 600 kilos per hectare. That's a huge drop in yields, and this because of unsustainable farming practices. And that's why when you are using the DAPs, are you helping your soil? You are helping it for a short period of time. So just like those people who smoke, when they don't smoke, wanasema nauma na kichwa. Ndio. So when they smoke, they feel, now I'm sober. But are they sober? That's the same thing that's happening to us. So if we see they are not productive, you go do some testing, you say, I need about 100 kilos of this fertilizer per hectare. You go get it, but then are the future generations going to benefit from the same farm? I once visited Loitoktok. I was just curbing the farming systems, and I pretended that I wanted 100 acres of land, and I got a few that are already prepared. No one is ready to take them, and one of the guys was kind enough to tell me what was going on, and he was like, David, this farm has been farmed for 3 years, and the guy who was here was using 300 kilos per hectare of DAP to increase his production. After DAP was adding lime, then he was adding some trace elements, and he was adding in large quantities. So after the 3 years, someone else comes in and they try to grow a crop and they don't get anything. Why? Because that soil is already dead. It can't sustain even the micro and macroorganisms that are healthy in or are helpful in breaking down the organic matter and make the soil productive. We have deforestation. We've seen that happening all over the country, where we are clearing our forests. And I once saw the professor from the Nairobi University protecting people from the Mau forest, asking, kwani mvua inatoka kwa miti? A whole professor, and he was asking, does rainfall come from the trees? And that's our water catchment area. So now what's happening in Mau Narok region, you can see it's already arid. Narok is an arid county. It's it's not productive as it used to be. Another thing, when you are practicing deforestation, the type of equipment that you are using, they are using the fossil fuels. When you cut down trees, you exposing your soil, and when the organic matter is being broken down by harsh sunshine, they produce the greenhouse gases that are not sustainable to our environment. And obviously, in the forest, that's where we get these helpful animals and insects like bees, which will promote pollination. We call them. They provide environmental services. Like pollination in crop is key. Without pollination, you can't produce anything. If you don't have trees also provide services like protecting your soil from erosion. Trees will clean your environment. If you go to a place where, like, Naivasha is dry, true, but is this area dry? And Lake Naivasha Resort is very green, and one of the things that is making it look as it is the maintenance of the ecosystem. We have the trees well maintained, and though they are irrigating, I don't think they'll be irrigating much if the previous generation didn't cut down the trees and it was raining frequently. True. We have transportation, and this when we are talking about transportation, that's mobility of both goods, services, and human beings like us. Like if you came from Nairobi today, maybe some of us used a Gazla or Gazlas. Sisi wote tulikuja na gari, si ndio? Yeah. And when you talk about transportation, and we are using these vehicles like Gazlas, I came with one person today. If I came with 5 people, it was my car is I think is a 5-seater. 5-seater means inabeba watu watano kwa insurance. Watu watano. Yeah, so gari yangu inabeba watu watano. If you had a Gazla, Daniel had a Gazla, another person had a Gazla, and we have 5 Gazlas driving from Nairobi to Naivasha, how much emission are we causing to the environment? So what will have happened, maybe one person could have called me and ulize, David, uko na gari? Niambia, acha niache yangu, tuende na yako. True? Yeah, you save on your fuel and also save our environment, because you're not emitting as much carbon monoxide or dioxide that we could have emitted, 5 of us combined. So what we are advocating for is a sustainable mobility, and that's where carpooling comes in. If you are living in Nakuru and your house is walking distance to your work, why not walk? That's sustainable mobility. It's helping you, your health, and is also helping in taking care of the environment, because you are reducing the emission of these greenhouse gases. We also have, if you have a bicycle instead of a motorcycle, and now I've seen in Nairobi we have so many electric motorbikes, and I think people will also move to electric cars, which is really going to be helpful. We have another activity, which is urbanization. And urbanization is what you told me. If you are driving from here to Nairobi, you get to a point where you just start seeing flats. People are no longer interested in farming. They are just building houses and real estates. True? This year, our GDP is being measured by the number of cement bags that the population is buying. True? Mami ndo nilisikia vibaya. Previously, we could measure our GDP by the number of corn bags that we produced. Or we could come to Nyandarua and we are told Nyandarua County has produced maybe these are these tons of potatoes. But now we are looking at Simba Cement, how many bags have you sold? Or East African Portland Cement, But is that sustainable in development? It's not. When you are building all these houses, we are clearing trees. We are opening. If you go to all these estates, we have cabros all over. True. We have cabros, and if not cabros, we have tarmac, just to make it presentable to the clients or to customers. And whenever we do that, we don't know that we are causing things like flooding, because we are collecting all that water onto that surface that is already tarmacked. And it's just like the expressway. The other time when it rained, and it was all flooding because we had literally created a river running from Lolongo to Westlands. So when the river finds a low point where there is some phase where water can go down, it releases the water. But otherwise, it's very dangerous. And looking at the long-term effect of it, we are causing all these problems by ourselves. We are not getting water recharge per boreholes, so we can't even irrigate because the rate of water percolation or infiltration has been greatly reduced by the hard services that we are creating in cities and in estates. We're also cutting down trees and maybe using those trees to burn charcoal. And if we don't burn charcoal, we are making other products that are also not sustainable. So how can we as an individual think about yourself? How can I reduce the carbon emission or greenhouse emissions individually? So when we look at climate change and its impact on crops, we have yield declines. When you talk about yield declines, as I said, there's a time we produced 3.2 tons, but now we are producing about 600 kilos. That's a big difference. And our agriculture nowadays, our problem is not that farming is extensive, and our problem lies in the yields. True. Our problem is lying in the yields, because if you're putting 20,000 shillings in an acre, you harvest 200 kilos of beans. 200 kilos, maybe you sell at 100 shillings. That's 2,000 shillings. 2,000 shillings, will it pay back your cost of production? You can't get back your cost of production. So what you do, if you are producing crops at a very high cost, that means it's a big problem, because your farming is no longer profitable. And it's not profitable because it's getting to a point where you can't produce crops without using the agrochemicals. You can't produce a crop without using the fertilizers, and you can't produce a crop even without plowing your land, which is not what we should be doing. I was looking into when I'm down in Kibwezi, there's a Athi River, and when you cross Athi River, you get into there is a Savo East. So when you're in the farm, you cross Athi River and you get into Savo East. Savo East is a national park. It's like a conservancy. When it rains like 100 millimeters of rainfall, Savo is green, very green. You've seen that? And even now, if you go down in Kibwezi, the area is very green. And if you want to buy land in Kibwezi, you will buy it now because it's green without knowing what is coming at you. But my point is, who makes the vegetation in the conservancy green? Wildlife. Sorry? Rain. Okay, I've had two answers. Wildlife, rain, wildlife. How do they make the vegetation green?
They just vector black.
Yeah, they base the soil organic matter. Yeah. So you are right. So the animals make the conservancy green. I should not say dry. You have a reason for that? I'll give you the reason. God is the greatest farmer. True? God is the greatest farmer. And if you want to be a great farmer, you must emulate nature. And that's why there are those animals. In fact, when you see elephants felling trees, they're not just doing that. They are doing what they're meant to do because God created them to do exactly that. So when that tree falls down, it's giving room for other vegetation to come up, for other animals to feed on. And that tree eventually will break down and it will become soil organic matter, which you need to hold enough water to make the vegetation green. True? Can we do the same to our farms? We can't do that because if you're a farmer here and you have this is a field of maize, you've harvested your maize, instead of leaving the maize top there to decompose and become soil organic matter, you say, oh, I have 20 cows and I have to feed them. So that maize has fed on all the nutrients in the soil. So you are eating the maize, you've taken the cobs, you want to take the nutrients. So what will your soil feed on? What will your soil feed on? So your soils become unproductive. They become thin, and thin. It's just like if you wanted to kill me today, maybe you'll chop my arm and I'll bleed as fast as possible and I just die. True. But if I wanted to kill you slowly, I'll cut a small portion of your finger, and the more you are bleeding, the more you are losing your energy. And that's what we are doing to our soils. We are losing the nutrients slowly. So eventually our soil will become productive. So the decline in yields being caused greatly by the temperature changes, because when the temperatures are high, it will influence your crop on all these stages. The high temperatures, first, you lose a lot of water through vaporization and transpiration, because the leaves or the plant will have to transpire, and when they're transpiring, they're losing water and oxygen at the same time. We also are losing water from your soil, because most of us, what I've said, we don't use soil cover in our soil. So you're exposing your soils to the sun, which is very hot. So you're losing your moisture within a very short time. We have the altered precipitation patterns, where we don't know when it's going to rain or when we say it's going to rain tomorrow. You go to the apps. We have weather apps checking so that we can go planting. So you see it's going to rain, you go plant, and then it rains 5 millimeters. True? According to Met, that's rainfall. But is it enough to sustain a crop? So even before if you had planted the seed like maize, before it's imbibed and germinates, it's already dry. And you're like, I'll have to plant again when the rains come. True? And that's what most of us do, because our rains, the patterns have been altered. It's not like back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, where you'll know by 15th of April, the rains are here with us. True? And in October, November, December, we were saying immediately after, by then it was Kenyatta Day. Immediately after Kenyatta Day, we get in and plant our crops. But now, go plant your crops 15th of April. You wait, and the rains will come maybe later, maybe early May. By that time, because of the hot sun, you are seeing seeds are no longer viable. So you will have to plant again. So that's altered precipitation, where we cannot predict its unpredictable rainfall patterns. And that's really affecting farming. We also have extreme weather events like flooding and droughts. Last year, Daniel, you can remember we had a very good crop of beans, 3,000 acres. And the insurer came to the farm and they saw, wow, this is a very good crop. And as a farm, we really didn't want to, we wanted to create that good relationship with the insurer, because it's not that every time when you insure, you must claim. And last year looked like a very, very good year. Very good year. And the beans came up very well until flowering. And then the rains started pouring. The first day, 20 millimeters, and we're like, wow, we are lucky it has rained when the crop is flowery. The second day, packed. The third day, about 60. So by the time we realized, we already had 178 millimeters of rainfall within 15 days. And the whole field was flooded. So from a good crop to a very poor crop. And that's an example of an extreme weather event, flooding or excessive rainfall. And we can have drought. You plant a crop, it comes up very well, and all of a sudden, the rains are gone and you can't produce anything. What are you going to do? And remember, looking back at the anthropogenic activities that we've already engaged ourselves into, and you remain helpless, that there's nothing you can do. So another impact is water availability, which I can combine with the temperature changes, because the water availability is reduced greatly. And that's why at times when the dams, you look at dams like Kindarum or Masinga, at times you hear the KPLC guys saying we are going to have some power ration because we don't have enough water to fill our dams. Well, it happens so many times. So another impact of climate change, it's really impacting water availability, both for power production and even for crop production, because for crops you'll have to irrigate. Because remember, when you go downstream, let's say like when a river starts from Wugong, it goes all the way to the Indian Ocean. And the people downstream, like, no, it's when it rains in Nairobi and it's not raining down in eastern Kenya, they are using that water from the river to irrigate their farms. And now they receive news that it's not raining in Nairobi. In fact, they sit there waiting to hear that it has rained in Nairobi, because rainfall has become like it's one of the devolved units. Inaanza Nairobi alafu wengine wapati. And that's the reality. So if the Nairobi people don't receive rainfall, Ongong, the Ukambani people say huu mwaka imekauka, tutambulia patupu. We have shifts in growing season. Like I say, previously we could grow our crops maybe early March or late April. But now you can even go a whole season without growing a crop because you're waiting for rainfall and it's not coming. And that's one of the effects of climate change. Yeah, we have also the impacts on crops, water and soil. If you look at drought hits 80% of farmland in arid and semi-arid regions. And that's why I say it in places like eastern Kenya or in the arid or semi-arid counties, they will grow their crops. They come very well, but at a certain point, they start going backwards because you don't have enough water. We have soil erosion, which I talked about in Mau Narok region. If you look at flash floods, when it rains and water is running along the roads, what's the color of the water? Is it clean? It's not. It's always brown. In Nairobi, when it rains, the water is black because not everyone opens up the sewage system into the drainages, which later on ends into the rivers. So we have soil erosion, and that includes mudslides. That it is an effect of excessive rainfall. We have water logging. That's on the water logging, and you have too much rainfall. And water logging is actually not presence of water. Water logging is lack of oxygen in the soil. That's why you can grow rice in a harrow, but you can't grow beans there. The roots to the rice roots are specialized to breathe in water, so there is enough oxygen for them. But if you have heavy black bottom soil and you've grown maize or sorghum or any other crop, you tend to get water logging. There is not enough oxygen and your crop dies. And we have fall armyworm damages. We've all heard of fall armyworms. Tunajua fall armyworms. Yeah, fall armyworms, they are like caterpillars and they really destroy maize. Fall armyworms produce very fast in high temperatures. So during the day and the temperatures are very high, fall armyworms are busy laying their eggs. So when it's cold, like at night, is when they get into the crops to find some warmth, and then they sleep to wake up and continue producing. When you want to control fall armyworms in your farms, like you do that at night, you get to your farm at night, and that's when you use, if you're using sustainable agricultural practices, maybe some ash, you put some ash on every like maize crop, and you will kill the fall armyworms. If you are spraying, you will get in with your herbicide, spray into every maize at night, not during the day, because during the day they are active outside and it's very hard to target them. We have the impacts on crops, and we have the economic consequences. The loss in crops was estimated to be 1 to 2 billion yearly if you monetize the losses. And all this loss, where is it going to? Some insurance will pay out some premiums because of a loss of crops. Farmers who've not insured their crops, they'll just say it is well, we will try again next season. And it becomes like a sequence. You plant again and you say, let me try my luck. If I don't succeed, I will try the following year. Those who are wise now start looking into what am I doing wrong so that I can correct it. Because you tell people, if you want to farm, if you farm today and you don't get anything, farm again next year, you don't get anything, and you continue farming, you will keep not getting anything. True? Yeah. And in farming, I tell people, you continue doing or farming, if you continue doing the same thing the same way, you'll continue getting the same results. And it applies very well in farming, because if you are applying poor farming practices in your fields, you will keep getting for nothing. We have as smallholders, up to 80% of farmers lose incomes. Because remember, in Kenya, 60% of Kenyan population are farmers, and they're relying on their crops to sustain their families. So you can imagine a farmer who has 10 acres who had grown maybe green grams, expecting to get some money to pay school fees for their kid, maybe to build a better family, and then that crop fails. I've been privileged to work in all these arid counties from Turkana, Kitui, Machakos, Makueni, gone to Garissa, Isiolo. And to date, there are kids who are walking barefoot because they have one cow, and they expect this cow maybe to produce a liter of milk which they can sell to their neighbor, then use that money to buy something or a shoe for their kids. But that doesn't come to see the light of the day. I was in Kibwezi last year for my first time, and I was just talking to farmers just to get the experience. And there's someone who told me, my son was born 10 years ago. 15 years ago. He's now, I think he was in grade 7, and he's never seen a maize cob. She's never seen a maize cob because they don't get anything. This year, I went to a farm and we grew a very good crop of green grams, which we got about 17 tons. And everyone there was like, wow, this is a miracle. And it's not a miracle, it's about changing our ways of doing things. And that's when we'll be able to see the results. So these smallholders are losing a lot on their incomes. But we need to see or look into ways of correcting this. We have price shocks. For example, meat prices. Remember when the debate was on Unga and the president was like, this is the highest it has ever gone in that regime. And then the president said, when I get in, bei ya unga itaenda chini. True. And it all starts from production. If you're not producing enough maize, we are going to pay the price. When we don't have enough tomatoes in the market, you go to the market to buy tomatoes and you're told one tomato is 10 shillings. And because you like tomatoes, you buy. True. When we produce in excess, you get there and you're told even 10 pieces at 10 bob. And we are happy because we've produced enough. So if we can't produce enough, we are going to be paying the price. That's on the table. On livestock, we have a reduced reproduction and production because production and reproduction will depend on the feeds that you're feeding on your cattle. With droughts, we are losing a lot on fodder. I remember there's a year that people were even asking they were asking whether they can get their cattle into the fields to like just to feed on the beans waste to sustain their cattle, and to be kind to them because you can see how they're losing their livestock. You tell them just get in. So because of droughts, we are losing pasture, food and pastures. So there's feed shortages, and we're also not getting animal productive. We have increased mortality rates where we are losing so many animals due to drought. We have low fertility in sheep and goats because obviously, even for us human beings, if you're not getting enough food, there's no way we are going to be reproductive or productive. And that's why when you go to the arid counties, you find the population is very low. Come to Kiambu and go to Kiambu where people are watu wameshiba, people are getting enough food. You find the people are having like 2, 3, 5 children as compared to other counties. And we also have shift in suitable regions, like when you have pastoralists migrate from one region to another, and that's causing conflicts. Next, that's causing conflicts for pasture, causing conflicts for water, and also for space, because when you are moving from one area to another and your cattle are passing through my field, I'll be like, mbona unapitisha ng'ombe wako kwa shamba langu? And these people start fighting most of the pastoralists. We also have disease and parasites spread, like East Coast fever, and we also have Rift Valley fever. We also have foot and mouth when it's hot, and also we have the kind of pneumoniasis, a sleeping sickness caused by flies. The vectors really do well when it's very hot. So all these diseases are being promoted by the increased temperatures. Also, the ticks affect 80% of cattle in dry areas because the ticks will reproduce very fast when it's very dry. The end result is veterinary cost burden on pastoralists because they have to treat their cattle. They lose their cattle at the same time. So for them, it's like an expensive venture, and you'll find most of them now moving from, if you go to the northern Kenya now, they're not keeping cows. They prefer to move to camels because for camels, they can reach from the forages that are on trees. Next, please. Yeah, so solutions. How can we make our land productive? And I'll go through that very fast because of my time. You can have regenerative farming practices or conservation farming practices which advocates for minimum soil disturbance. you don't have to plow your land every year because you're compacting your soil, you're exposing your moisture to the sun, and you're losing a lot on your yields. We have plants in the ground. Plants are all year round. Sorry, that was a typo. We have to have plants all year round in your farm so that you can use the plants as soil cover. So you have cover crops, and those when you have crops in your farm all year round, there are some like grasses that you can get in and cut, and then they regenerate. So you're not leaving your soil bare at any given time. That helps you in controlling soil erosion. It's helping you in carbon sequestration because when the plant is breathing, it's taking all the carbon from the atmosphere and fixing it into the soil. We have diversified crops in time and space. If you have your land, don't do what you call monocropping, where you grow only maize. You can grow maize and beans, where you have a symbiotic relationship. You can have agroforestry, where you are planting both fruits, and under the fruits you're having your food crops, and that's going to be helping in controlling soil erosion, cleaning up the air around you, and at the same time you are keeping yourself healthy. We have integrate livestock when possible, because most of the plant residues are always given to livestock, and that's our nature. So when you give these plant residues to livestock, they feed on them, and they are done. Again, you can use as manure instead of using the synthetic fertilizers. And we also have precision application of biological and chemical inputs. So regenerative agriculture is an outcome based on food production system that nurtures and restores soil health, protects the climate, water resources, and biodiversity. And at the end of the day, you are enhancing your farm's productivity and profitability. Yeah, so we can also plant drought or heat tolerant varieties. We have so many, like when you go to Calro, and even ourselves, we are doing some breeding so that we can get some crops that are drought resistant and not resistant actually, but tolerant. We can diversify a cropping system so that when you go to Nyandara, you don't only concentrate on potatoes. You can say, let's buy another crop, and you will realize you can grow anything. Like when we first started farming in Machakos, we were like, everyone was saying green grams, but we've since grown 43 different crops. And nowadays I tell people there's nothing you can't produce in your farms. Hata ni watoto tungekuwa na mbegu tuweke, I think watamea. We have preserving indigenous varieties. Nowadays people are depending on the GMOs. They are not sustainable at all. Can we go back to our indigenous varieties, the sorghum, the millet, our indigenous maize, that we can remultiply ourselves? When we are depending on others, we are just creating a problem for ourselves, because you can't get seeds from the crop that you've planted. Hiyo mbegu ukivuna, an F1, you harvest your maize, you can't use it again. But the indigenous varieties, when you harvest, you can use your harvest as a seed again. So you can use eye pits and mulching. Eye pits are those pits that will collect water when it rains. You can have solar drip irrigation. They're automated and they help you in sustainable use of your water. And we can also practice agroforestry, which is very key in profitability and sustainability. Yeah, in a brand short of time. For livestock, we have to maybe look at the heat tolerant breeds. That's a zebu, and it's a local breed, very heat tolerant, and also does well in dry areas. Shades and cooling systems. You can even build, and without building, you can plant enough trees so that when it's very hot, your cows are resting under the shades. You can have diversified feed structures. That's a bale of hay. So when it has rained and you have excess grasses, you can harvest your grass, make hay, and then you can be feeding your animals when it's dry. And we can have things like mobile animal health services, where veterinary service officers can go and and maybe help people in the arid and semi-arid regions to treat their cows and reduce the mortality rates. Now, with our climate risk, we need to have an assessment framework. So how are we going to know that we are facing a risk? And before that, before you know you are going to get the risk, so then you are going to be exposed to the risk. You need to know the hazards or identification, and those are the key things that we are looking into. We look at drought, floods, and pests. That's in agriculture. Those are the main things that will affect your farming activities, like drought, floods, and pests. As I've mentioned, we can have vulnerability mapping for both smallholders and commercial farmers. Nowadays, you have NDVI images where you can run a plane onto an area and they can show you the level of vegetation cover, and it will help you also be in a position to quantify or to know whether you are facing a risk or not. I think there's ag application. I think we shared some time back where you can log in. Like when I'm here, I can log into maybe a farm in Ethiopia, and the satellite takes images every 6 days. So even when I'm here, I can be able to look at the crop, and depending on the color that the NDVI images are giving you, you can know whether your crop is being affected by drought or even by flooding, and you can notify the relevant authorities or the relevant people in good time so that you can mitigate the risks. On exposure analysis, we have geographic hotspots, and in this case in Kenya, mostly Zasa, which are arid and semi-arid areas, and we need to see or look into how we are going to quantify our risk, maybe the yields, economic loss, or I was thinking in future maybe those people who are practicing regenerative farming practices, maybe we can come up with a system of being able to quantify the risk that also they are experiencing next. Yeah, so these are linking risk predictions with insurance uptake. I will not dwell so much on the first two slides. You can take a photo of that. It's self-explanatory. But at the end of the day, when you have better prediction, it ends up being a lower risk, and then it will be it adds up to a more affordable insurance. We have timely mitigation. When you apply the two tools, you'll have timely mitigation where you have fewer claims, and you also build healthier portfolios, because an insurer doesn't want that every time ni kulipa. At times they can also benefit from the same. You build a healthier portfolio, and you also build trust and encourage uptake among many clients. So if you have many clients as an insurance, that's a win. But if the clients don't want to take up the insurance, that's a loss for them, because they don't know what's coming at them, and it's also a loss for the insurer and the greater population, and will also strengthen overall climate resilience, which we are all looking into. So we have the role of risk assessors. So for the risk assessors, you can integrate climate projections into risk models. If we have more time, we can discuss that. We guide policy on contingency, planning, and resource allocation. We can also validate early warning and index insurance triggers, and also appreciate and work with animal production and agronomists to better understand the sector. So if you are an insurer, I think the last point, if you are working with these people, the animal production people and agronomists, it will help you to better understand whether you're exposed to risk or not. So what we need to do, we need to invest in climate data, infrastructure, and a downscaled model so that we can have all people uptaking the insurance, we need to also to strengthen multi-stakeholder knowledge platforms so that when we meet farmers, we can educate them on what we are doing, and as agricultural experts, we can also pass the knowledge on sustainable farming practices. We can also scale up proven conservation agriculture practices, because as an insurer, when you go somewhere and you find, or a risk assessor, when you go somewhere and you find someone practicing, someone farming with practices that are not sustainable, you can tell them, I saw this happening somewhere, can you try it? So if they are proven, if there are practices that are proven to be working, why can't we scale them up so that all farmers can adopt them? And we also need to monitor and evaluate adaptation interventions. And by doing that, we'll be able to come up with better farming systems, and it will be a win-win for all the stakeholders in the farming, insurance, risk assessors, and even banking, and the entire population. Thanks so much, and I'm sorry for taking much of the time.